Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video and myself, Jonathan MSP. This is Ukraine War News Update. First part thereof for the 9th of August 2024. It's bleary. I'm bleary-eyed early in the morning on my holidays. So it's being in a different time zone. It's quite difficult for me to get a handle on exactly what's taken place overnight, where I normally would wake up UK time and everything's filtering out straight away from Ukraine. At the moment, for me, it's a little bit difficult. I have to go back quite a long way to find things. I get a really eclectic mix of chronologies of what's going on. So hopefully this all makes sense. And I probably missed a whole load of stuff that I really almost certainly shouldn't have. Right, we'll start with the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to the video. I will also include, as I normally do, the links to all of what I show on hits and losses and strikes segments for this video. The links are in the description. However, at the moment, because of, as I say, the way that I've been doing it and using different sort of platforms throughout the day, that actually I won't have all of the links to these videos, but apologies. It's just quite difficult at the moment to gather everything into one place. Right, 1,030 personnel lost. That's over 1,000. That's down from what we have seen, and 3 tanks is lower than we have seen. 9 armored personnel vehicles. So all of those, well, not personnel is still above average because every day above 1,000 is a difficult day for the Russians. But the tanks and armored personnel vehicle numbers are lower than we have seen, lower than average. 49 artillery systems is fairly high. That's not quite 3 times the daily average, but certainly over twice the daily average. 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems is significant because I think the Russians are suffering in that category. I think Ukrainians have spent a couple of days really focusing on air defense systems, and we'll look at a bit of evidence for that later. 86 vehicles and fuel tanks is very high, and I think that's partly because a column of vehicles was hit, at least one column. There are some claims that maybe more than one column has been hit, but anyway, a hit overnight in the Kursk region, providing reinforcements to the Russian troops fighting there. 2 pieces of special equipment as well. Okay. So, in fact, we'll go to see if Andrew Perpetua has any data out. I don't think he has from yesterday, so we'll continue with our other sources. That'll come out, I'm sure, just as soon as I finish publishing this video. There's another video of lots of Russians being captured, taken POW in Kursk region. This is, although, it does look like that is not this time of year, actually. So, no, actually, that is incorrect. I will not include that now in my sources, so I'll get rid of that. That is a bunch of Russian soldiers being taken prisoner, but this is, you can see by the foliage that is in a wintertime. But however, there have been a huge number of prisoners taken in the Kursk region. Also, as I noted yesterday, here's a quote. We note a significantly lower number of use of KAB, so the guided glide bombs in Kharkiv region. If earlier 30 to 60 carbs were recorded per day, now only a few aerial bombs and 2 missiles have been fired, says Oleh Sinerbov. So that is an interesting outcome from what has been taking place in Kharkiv. I don't know whether that is as a result of air defense systems being moved further forward in Kharkiv that can point into Belgorod Oblast. And obviously, there have been claims of shoot downs in Kursk, and so it could be that the Russians are suffering from a lack of close air support in that region as well. Now, a large fire is occurring in Rilsk in the Kursk region. So this is one of the vectors of attack. If we look at what's happened over the border into Kursk, one of the places, Rilsk, on the way to there through Koronova, there's talk about fighting in Koronova and the Ukrainians possibly controlling Koronova or fighting over it. There are sort of 2 or maybe 3 prongs to the attacks here. And Rilsk is the direction of one of these attacks. Well, there was reportedly a Russian column that was destroyed at night. Rilsk would be a key target for Ukraine to cut off most Russian logistics going to the border with Ukraine's Sumy region. It's within HIMARS range. Don't know. don't know what caused the explosions to this uh, column of vehicles, but in the morning we can now see the end result of that. So this was happening last night. Earlier tonight, Ukrainian forces successfully hit a Russian column, roughly 30 kilometers behind the current front line in Kursk. The Russian column moving on the E38 highway in Oktyabrskoye was reportedly hit by a missile strike, losing multiple vehicles. If that is something like I don't know, a TACMS missile using cluster munitions or something similar, then that's going to be really significant because it is the Ukrainians using those into Kursk, not into Belgorod. So that would be a significant difference if the Ukrainians were able to use HIMARS into Kursk, and if it was responsible for this, then that's a that's a great haul. There are some claims that this was an ambush that took out the column, but I doubt that. Russians were reacting incredibly badly to this. And if they are not happy for obvious reasons. No report says Russian channels commenting on the attacked column near east of Rilsk. Quote, just watch a video of the scene. 13 military Urals and Kamaz covered trucks with infantry, many dead, some of the vehicles burned to the ground. It looks like the entire column was carrying infantry. They were armed, most likely a platoon per vehicle, 3 to 4 companies. An entire battalion was destroyed, judging by the appearance of the column. About half were killed, and this is one of the bloodiest and most massive strikes, most likely HIMARS, in the entire war. So some claims that perhaps 100 soldiers were killed in this strike. Now there is video evidence of the carnage. I can't really play it to you because you do drive past lorries with sort of dead bodies on, but you drive there are people now driving past the destroyed column. There are trucks there loading up dead bodies. Reported as the aftermath of yesterday's strikes. There's no reports on the Russian column east of Rilsk. Lots of destroyed vehicles and also dead Russian soldiers can be seen. These were reportedly reserves called up to be sent to the Kursk region. That footage shows that Russian convoy. Around 12 trucks and Bukankers have been damaged or destroyed. Several trucks, which arrived later to clean up the mess, are loaded with dead Russian soldiers. It's likely that those are Russian reinforcements that got ambushed by a Ukrainian unit, says Tendar. I don't think that's true. I think it probably is more likely a strike from a missile, but you just don't know. Now there's lots of things can be said about Kursk. Again, I did a whole video on that yesterday. But here's a Polish-made AHS Crab being struck by a Lancet. Is it? But anyway, yes, it is a Lancet. So the Ukrainians are bringing across like proper pieces of equipment. There are tanks that are actively supporting these maneuvers or involved, not supporting, but a central part of these maneuvers. We've got self-propelled artillery, all sorts of stuff being used by the Ukrainians there. So it is almost a proper offensive move. It's just not just a simple incursion by the Russian Free Legion or the Volunteer Corps. Another bit of footage has just come out. Again, I won't show it to you in full, but it's a HIMARS strike with cluster munitions on a training ground in Zaporizhia, and that gets taken out. So that could have caused quite a lot of carnage for the Russians there. The Ukrainians seem to be doing an awful lot of different things at the moment. There are a number of strikes overnight that will not just that column, and there was a report, as I mentioned, that a second column, I think is Romanov, the Russian mill blogger, saying it wasn't the only one, or something cryptic like that, which makes you think, well, there could have been another strike that we don't know about on Russian reserves. We'll pop back to the idea of Russian reserves in Kursk in the other section later, that blue tab group up there. So we'll now start on strikes, distant strikes overnight. No missiles overnight. Well, actually, there was one that came this morning, actually. But a Ukrainian air defense took down 27 of 27 attack drones. So they're having really good high percentage interception rates. Zero damage being reported from those. All of them shot down. So that's excellent from the Ukrainians. Again, really successful there. Now, there was Konstantinivka was hit with the KH-38 missile, and that has caused an awful lot of damage. It was reported that the supermarket in the town had come under artillery strike initially, but now it's thought to be KH-38 missile. At least 11 people have been killed, 37 injured, and some of the footage coming out there is pretty horrific, as you'll see here. So yeah, in Konstantinivka, a supermarket was hit by a Russian missile. The Echo market is on fire and destroyed. Apparently, I think there were 50 people inside at the time. There is no information yet on possible victims. Well, at least 11 have died there. 11 dead, 44 injured, so it's even higher in this one. These 4 private houses, a shopping centre, post office, shops, and a car wash, cars were damaged there. So Konstantinivka, which is part of that, is one of the initial cities on that semicircle of cities behind Chasiv Yar. So it's the first one. You got Druzhkivka, and then Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, so on and so forth. Okay, so Russia says that 29 drones were shot down over Belgorod region. So that's Ukrainian drones going into Belgorod there. So a very active night for the Ukrainians attacking into Russia. That's just in Belgorod. I wonder how many weren't stopped, says Tim White. At least one was seen later in Lipetsk. We'll come to that in a second. Governor there says, to ensure safety, a decision was made to evacuate the settlements of Koptsevi, Kutur, Fedorovka, Yakovlevka, and Tinkovka. So there are evacuations being made due to Ukrainian drone strikes. Okay, last night, Ukrainian drones struck a Russian repair base in Novy Oskol in Belgorod. So that's one of the places hit in Belgorod, according to Russian sources. 7 drones hit the base, damaging 2 hangars and 3 military vehicles. And then we get on to the big one. So, you know, a lot of stuff could well have happened over in Belgorod. We just don't know. I mean, the claim that 20-something drones were shot down, that all the drones were shot down, means that, you know, something definitely has happened. Right. So, yeah, the big one is this. Ukrainian General Staff confirms that Ukraine struck Lipetsk airfield overnight, but is clarifying the results. Also, this, though, they also, and we'll come on to Lipetsk in a second, they also say they targeted 3 Russian air defense systems, radars, in Donetsk Oblast, 2 for S-350 and 1 for an S-300. They say 1 S-350 radar was destroyed, and they're clarifying the results for the other 2. And that's what I was talking about with regard to air defense systems being hit and radars and whatnot. That's really important degradation of the Russian capabilities there. That's in Donetsk. And here is potentially elements or evidence of that. Ukrainian forces have possibly struck an air defense system in the Yakovlevsky district, reports from Belgorod. So this is in Belgorod, not Donetsk. So I don't know if this is different. So Donetsk Oblast, S-300 and S-350s, but then we're going back to Belgorod here, so there could be other strikes on these systems. So, yeah, anyway, to continue, reports from Belgorod media mentioned smoke rising from the area, which coincides with previous missile launches observed there. It's suspected that the strike hit a launcher near the village of Shopino. 3 days earlier, another Ukrainian strike targeted an air defense installation near the village of Streletskoye in the Belgorod district. So they are evidently maintaining a lot of pressure on Russian air defenses in Belgorod. And there are these theories that Ukraine might be getting ready for an attack up through Kharkiv Oblast into Belgorod. Could that be shaping operations for that? I don't know that Ukraine remotely have the ability to carry out something like that, but they could have been keeping things quiet and properly trying to mess around with the Russians. So now let's go to Lipetsk. There was a massive raid of attack drones on the airfield, after which ammunition was detonated. After the explosions, the enemy urgently lifted the aircraft into the air. Residents of 4 settlements located near the airfield were evacuated. So that is some huge explosions in Lipetsk. Drone attack there. The airbase has Su-34, Su-25, MiG-29, and also Su-57 airframes. Now, I don't think the airframes were possibly not even targeted. I'll show you some firms data actually that I found over here. So Lipetsk, just to let you know, is all the way up there. That's Kharkiv into Voronezh Oblast. But the firms data here shows that all of the explosions are coming from the center of the airfield. So I'm not sure that they were properly targeting the aircraft. Nonetheless, yeah, a lot of destruction there. And Michael McKay says there have been explosions at the airfield in Lipetsk, Russian Federation, 350 kilometers from the border. As usual, Russian propaganda channels report shooting down every aerial target over Lipetsk, but falling debris caused fires. Yet those same media advise the settlements of the four mentioned earlier are put under an evacuation order. So, yeah. Ukraine military hit Lipetsk airbase. Ordnance warehouses were wiped out. So this appears, says Eurominded Press, this appears to be the initial target for those drones. Ukrainian defense forces successfully struck Russian military airfield Lipetsk 2 overnight, triggering explosions and fires, potentially destroying over 700 guided bombs. This is not the first time they've done this. They did this at Morozovsk Air Base as well, where they are not so much concentrating on taking out the airplanes, but taking out the bombs that the airplanes drop, which means that, what can you do with those airplanes if you have no ordnance to drop from there? So this could be quite a clever tactic for them. Also, so that is going to be big news. We'll see what's happened there. Obviously, there's some fairly sizable explosions, firms picking up quite a lot there, but it's out, not on the airbase itself, so unlikely any airplanes will have been affected. Temporarily occupied Crimea did not sleep well, says Michael McKay. Drones and missiles have hit strategic and military targets of the Russian fascist invaders in Sevastopol near Simferopol, as well as in Saki and Black Sea districts. So Saki is an airbase that has been hit a number of times. So Crimea really under the cosh there. Sevastopol was attacked by maritime drones at night. Smoke is coming from the sea. There are different claims about this picture. Some saying that it's debris falling from aerial drones down into the sea. Initially, it was claimed to be at Belbek Air Base, but actually it's coming from the sea. So we'll see. There are a number of places in Crimea were definitely targeted overnight and could have some significant damage to various targets there. And stuff comes out regularly, doesn't it, after the events happen? So area of exploded ammunition depots in Crimea has fully burned. So there's satellite imagery showing extensive damage to, again, it looks like ammunition depots, not just in Belgorod, not just in Kursk, but also Crimea is often targeted for these depots. The ammunition depots near the village of Sredzhnoye in the Krasnogvardeyski district caught fire on the evening of August 6th. So that's a few days ago now. And then we have incredible footage coming out of damage. Oops, no, it's gone here. Yeah, here it is. Released of the site of Ukraine's attack on an ammunition depot in Voronezh a month ago. I don't know if you remember. I think it's one that had like massive explosions that were it was cooking off for ages. It was a whole warehouse or few of full of ordnance. Just 3 drones managed to inflict this damage, helped by Russia's Unit 01665 seeing its missiles denazify themselves. Explosions continued the whole day. Some incredible footage of that. The damage. So this was, and you can see elements of these missiles there, but this was full of Russian ordnance, and it just massively deconstructed, should we say. Right, moving on to other bits and pieces to finish up here, and we're going to go back to Kursk. There's a lot going on in Kursk, so what can I say? It seems like the Russians are attacking back into Kursk finally, so they are getting their act together. And I think so again, I would suggest going to Noel Reports for his daily update. There are PR videos of Russian reserve forces going towards Kursk or in Kursk. There's also this guy rather obviously geolocating a train full of Russian equipment going towards Kursk. And so that is happening, as well as these pushbacks. So this is one of the maps that Noel Reports has released, showing that areas where the Russians are pushing back, clashes being reported there. So that is what's happening, and we'll be interested to see how that develops and how much defense the Ukrainians will put in and how much the Russians can give to, in terms of resources, give to these efforts. Now, when you look at, okay, Tim White says Russia's reassured its public that reserves are heading to liberate Moscow, Kursk. Sorry, Moscow claims that Grad, MLRS, towed artillery pieces, tanks, and heavy tracked vehicles. Ural and Kamaz trucks are on the way, but they don't mention the gear may not work and the reserves are untrained conscripts. Says Tim White, tongue in cheek. Well, not tongue in cheek, but that is one of the possibilities. Now, when you look a bit closer at some of these vehicles, here's an image of one of the vehicles that's on the way. So when you look at it from afar, you think, oh, look at that, loads of equipment going to Kursk to sort them out. Well, and the claim was a Grad launcher. Well, actually, this is a Grad launcher on the top of an MTLB. So this is one of these not SAMs, but Frankenstein kind of vehicles. This is the quality of their reinforcements being sent to Kursk. I mean, this is kind of suboptimal stuff, isn't it? Another Russian military equipment, or bunch of equipment being transported to Kursk region. That train in the background, when you look a bit more closely, is loaded with MTLBs installed with Zu-23. So those are old, like, autocannons, anti-aircraft autocannons on top of a MTLB, and an MT-12 Rapira 100mm anti-tank guns. So this is old. This is not optimal equipment, really. And as he confirms here, MTLB with an installed Grad 1 rocket launcher, as we saw. So I don't think it's the Russians are in a great place to be able to defend effectively this area. But it depends how many forces and resources the Ukrainians have, and what their objectives are, and what they're willing to I guess sacrifice to this area in light of their objectives. So this is the latest map of Ukraine-controlled territory, based on aggregate data from mill bloggers, RFE and RL, and the Institute for the Study of War. So this is somebody producing this map, and you can see that there are these three prongs going up the roads in the three different directions, towards Kursk, towards Lvov, and towards Rilsk here. We'll see what happens in terms of the Russians pushing back, and what the Ukrainians do. But perspective here. So the current incursion into Kursk, the Ukraine control map says is currently 250. 250 square kilometers. Actually, it's more than that now, based on known geolocations. There are currently the area currently occupied since the second Kharkiv offensive is roughly 180 square kilometers. So, point being that the Russians since May the 10th have achieved 180 square kilometers, and the Ukrainians in just a couple of days, well, actually, Surat Maps claims the Ukrainian army has already seized 458 square kilometers and entered 33 localities in the Kursk Oblast. Undoubtedly, he says, American and British intelligence, because of course the Ukrainians can't just do things themselves. I mean, this may well be true, of course, was aware of Russia's lack of defenses on this front, which has allowed Ukrainian forces to make deep advances into Russian territory. There's talk of an even deeper advances. However, these are made by the Ukrainian DRG and special forces. I just saw that lightning flash, and I don't know if you heard that thunder that's just gone out. That's why I'm not out by the pool right at the moment. That's one of the loudest bits of thunder I think I've ever heard, and I've got noise-cancelling headphones on. Anyway, there is talk of even deeper advances. However, these are made by the Ukrainian DRG and special forces. As for the former, the initial breakthrough caught many Russian detachments in that area unaware, some of which have been captured by Ukrainian troops. The reasons behind this operation is still unknown, but as time goes by, the possibility of the creation of a buffer zone is still unknown. It remains to be seen whether the consolidation of positions in the occupied territory will begin. Meanwhile, the build-up of forces on the Sumy border continues. In the same way, the Russian army continues to accumulate reinforcements in Kursk. Offensive actions have begun to slow down the Ukrainian advance, but it's not yet possible to speak of a turning point. The local militias are playing a valuable role in the defense of the localities, especially inside the town of Sudzha. Indeed, the town has not fallen, although some people have put this statement in my mouth. I would like to think that it's not intentional, but the result of lack of reading comprehension, and remains divided between the two sides. Meanwhile, the war continues in the Donbass. as someone said on my thread yesterday, or my video yesterday about Kursk, smart move by the Ukrainian capturing Sudzha. The Trans-Siberia pipeline meets the Brotherhood pipeline. It's a major natural gas transit hub from Sudzha. The pipeline goes west across Ukraine to Europe. Russia cannot use their standard tactic of flatten everything with artillery and glide bombs there for fear of damaging the transit hub, which would do more harm to the Russian economy. So something worth noting there. And Tatarigami, interestingly, points out that one of the arguments used by Russian propaganda during the occupation of Crimea was that the local population didn't resist the invasion. Following the same logic, it seems that the Kursk has been waiting for years to join Ukraine. So none of the local population put up resistance to Ukrainians, so therefore it must be part of Ukraine, right? Right. Ukraine has also sought approval for ATACMS use in the Kursk offensive. Ukraine needs it to target Russian airfields, retaliating against Ukraine's ongoing incursion into Kursk Oblast, according to a Zelensky official. And this, I'll probably wait to, well, we'll go through this. This will be the last thing to mention. A general observation by Carl, who is someone, is an Estonian military analyst that Michael Weiss often relies on, and as a general analysis of what's going on the front lines. Right. So these are the observations about what's going on. Let's start with the situation on the Eastern Front, as it's still the most painful and problematic for Ukraine. Russian pressure and forward movement towards Prokrovsk and Torets continue there. Russia has very small daily advances, but there is still the worrying. It's still worrying that Ukraine hasn't been able to put a stop to it. A week ago, it was estimated that since the beginning of the year, Russia has gained 750 square kilometers. The area is itself very little, nothing dramatic. Ukraine has taken control of 200 square kilometers in the Kursk Oblast in just 2 days. Well, actually, now we're coming on to day 4, and as mentioned, 458 square kilometers might well be what they've taken. So, you put that into the perspective of Russia having gained 750 square kilometers since the beginning of the year. That Kursk offensive is quite impressive. But constant retreat on the Eastern Front is also a psychological problem. Russia is constantly closer to a more significant towns of Konstantinivka and Chasiv Yar. From there, risks towards Kramatorsk and Sloviansk will be more serious. Ukraine needs to close that direction. Another concern is that has recurred in the last weeks is Russia's superiority in artillery ammunition. Some time ago, that superiority had almost been eliminated. Ukraine's main concern is still the glide bombs that Russia uses to destroy Ukrainian defensive positions. Nothing to do but retreat to the next position. It's not a scare story yet, but the trend is worrying. And interesting on that point that we've now seen a number of ammunition warehouses at the air bases where those bombs have been targeted. Anyway, to continue, Russia's gains this year are already twice as much as what Ukraine managed to regain in the southern front all of last summer, but there are small volumes overall compared to what Ukraine liberated in Kherson and Dnieper's West Bank or in Kharkiv in autumn of 2022. If the pressure continues and Russia gets Chasiv Yar and Konstantinivka, the situation will become more critical on the Sloviansk and Kramatorsk directions. These are two are the last major cities in the Donetsk Oblast still under Ukraine's control. It may also put more pressure on the Vuhledar direction on the southernmost corner of the front. With time, this will become more problematic. Such constant retreat into new defensive positions also means that Ukraine cannot prepare for proper defensive lines. There is a concern as to whether or not the Kursk operation is actually meaningful, or if Ukraine should have pushed those reserves to the Eastern Front. It's difficult to assess this, and we will only know in time. So obviously we'll keep an eye on that. And then last thing to mention is the F-16 fighter jets. So thought to be only working in air defense mode as they've been introduced to the skies above Ukraine. F-16 fighter jets have been spotted over the Kherson region. Pavel Filipchuk, the Russian-appointed head of the occupational administration of Kakhovka Municipal District in the Kherson region, has stated. So that's interesting that the Russians claiming that F-16s are operating over Kherson, which means that they're going to be much closer to the action and possibly supporting efforts or taking out air defense systems and radars, maybe with harm missiles or whatnot, near the front line there, near the Dnipro River. If that's true, I think that's fairly significant. But you quite often hear things like this from the Russians. They were claiming that to have seen F-16s before they were in Ukraine. So take it with a pinch of salt. Anyway, hopefully that was useful. Thanks for watching. Take care, guys. Speak soon.